Singing About Canada, led by the Honourable Member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Oh, gather round, everybody. Okay, you ready? Okay. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Car ton bras c'est porter le pays, il s'est porté à quoi? Ton histoire est pour d'épopées, des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Now the opening face-off. Statements by members. Déclaration des députés. À l'ordre.
Order.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, the quintessential Canadian magazine Maclean's has trotted out yet another anti-Quebec rant. Quebec, according to Maclean's, is pathologically alienated and deficient compared to the rest of Canada, with a glaring absence of solidarity. This disdain for Quebec coming from Canada, Mr. Speaker, is starting to get repetitive. Quebec bashing has become socially acceptable in Canada. Never could another community be humiliated in this fashion without a strong rebuke from the House of Commons. If the author had written Catholics or the Greek community or homosexuals, for example, were pathologically alienated, this House would have rightly and immediately unanimously condemned such an outrage. But when it's Quebec, things are different. Yesterday, the member for Pointe-de-L'Île tabled a motion to condemn the Maclean's article. The House refused. That says a lot. When federal MPs, it says a lot about their respect for Quebec. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to salute the launching of the Comment d'un Angelo campaign to fight sexual violence in bars. This initiative is based on the success of campaigns like Ask for Angela in the UK and Angel Shot in the US. It creates a protocol for staff in bars to help women and men who feel threatened and need help. The person who fears for their safety has only to order an Angel Shot with one of the following three specifications: with ice, without ice, or with lime. Each of these options accentuates the degree of security sought out by the potential victim. I would invite my colleagues to support this initiative by making their respective communities aware of it. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, in this year of 2017, all Canadians from coast to coast to coast share an undeniable desire to celebrate proudly the 150th anniversary of our great federation. That is why, from the very start of my term of office in Beauport-Limoilou, I set for myself the goal of creating unique festivities for all constituents. So with great pride, I announced today, in cooperation with the Limoilou en Vrac and Société d'Art et d'Histoire de Beauport, that there will this summer in my riding be two celebrations of the 150th, one in Parc Cartier-Brébeuf and the other in the Vieux Beauport. These will be historical celebrations and family activities. Each event is very promising, and that's why we expect tens of thousands of constituents from Beauport-Limoilou to turn out. I'd like to point out that these festivities highlight the existence of Canada, its strength, its courage, its dynamism, its audacity, and especially the extraordinary people who live in Canada day after day. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie.
A few moments to send our thoughts to our colleagues in Britain, in Westminster right now, going through very scary moments, and I'm deeply in sympathy with them. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take a moment today to point out that it's Persian New Year, Nowruz. Nowruz is a moment of renewal. It's celebrated by people of Afghan and Iranian origin and many other communities from Western Asia. It's the first day of spring.
viewed as a fresh start, a second chance, a time to rejuvenate, and a time for hope. Avec le début
With the start of spring, and we all know that in Canada that comes a little later, I am inspired by the positive change that is taking place all across our country. I firmly believe that we live in one of the best countries in the world, a country that grows ever stronger, ever fairer, and forward-looking. To all those celebrating this special day, Happy Persian New Year.
De Rosemont, la petite pat-
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to congratulate the Armenian community for its contribution to our communities. There's a whole host of Armenian organizations that contribute to improving our society. One of them is the Armenian General Benevolent Union, which is celebrating its 60th anniversary in Canada today. The AGBU has community centers where services are provided to all age groups, whether it's the youngest scouts, the bees, sports teams, or seniors. There's Saturday school that provides dance, painting, and photography for young people. And the AGBU is very important when it comes to education. In Montreal, there's the Alex Manouchian School. They transmit Armenian culture, and they also respond to crises. The school also opens its doors widely to refugees who need to learn French. Congratulations to the AGBU on its 60th anniversary.
Vaughan.
Mr. Speaker, I also want to mention today that my thoughts are with those in London struggling with the tragedy unfolding there at the moment. I rise today, though, to honour the life and community contributions of Isabella Ferrara of Vaughan, who suddenly passed away on February the 13th. Isabella was a social activist and a strong advocate for seniors' causes. She believed an active social life could help provide important supports for many seniors. Her work, both as a president of the Pine York Seniors Club and the founder of SAVI, Seniors Association of Vaughan Initiative, was instrumental in forging a vibrant, tightly knit and healthy seniors community in Vaughan. In recognition of her significant contribution, Isabella received awards across all levels of government: the Order of Vaughan, the Ontario Seniors Achievement Award, and the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. Our thoughts are with Vince, her husband, who was always supportive of her activities, and her family. Isabella Ferrara is an example to us all of a life well lived. Grazie.
The Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, our thoughts and prayers, yes, are with the British Parliament today as well. Mr. Speaker, tomorrow the Drumheller and District Chamber of Commerce will hold its 2017 annual general meeting. I wish the Chamber of Commerce members all the best during their deliberations. We know that the citizens in Drumheller and surrounding communities, like many places in our province and country, count on the work of a strong local Chamber of Commerce. The hard work accomplished by members of local chambers facilitates prosperous businesses and help provide jobs and economic growth in the communities where they serve. It is important for all of us to work together in the current difficult economic times. All across my large and mainly rural riding of Battle River Crowfoot, the folk in many small towns, villages and hamlets benefit from the work of our local volunteers who provide their time and effort in support of their local economies, both large and small. All members of Parliament in this House should make an effort to acknowledge the good work of their local community leaders who contribute to the work of a local Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable James A. McGraw, former member of this House and 8th Lieutenant Governor of Newfoundland, passed away on February 28th. He was a generous and charismatic figure and a staunch defender of Newfoundland. Jim was born in Buckins in 1932 to a family of 13 and was first elected in 1957 to our riding of St. John's East. In his 7 parliaments, he distinguished himself in countless ways, notably as Minister of Fisheries, and also by authoring a report on the reform of our House of Commons, a report which led to our Speaker being elected by secret ballot. In 1986, he accepted an appointment as Lieutenant Governor of Newfoundland, an office he served until 1991. McGraw's devotion to Newfoundland and Labrador and its people continued throughout his life, including support for education and the arts. He is survived by his wife, Margaret, and 3 generations of children, some of whom are celebrating with us here today. To the Honourable James McGraw and his family, thank you for a lifetime of public service.
The honourable member for Laval-Les-Îles. Mr. Speaker, the riding of Laval-Les-Îles harbors an exceptional community of over 11,000 people from the Hellenic Republic. These families had the courage to immigrate to Canada and to establish themselves here and to share their cultural heritage. They participated in the growth of multiculturalism in Canada. The Greek community is inclusive and shows great solidarity and has built strong ties with people in the surrounding community. They have contributed to human development. The national celebration of Greek independence is celebrated on March 25th with great fanfare, and I will be a full participant in those celebrations. Happy National Celebration of Greece to the entire Greek community in Laval-Les-Îles, in Laval, and in Canada. Hail Greece!
The honourable member for Kitchener-Conestoga.
Mr. Speaker, this year marks the 60th anniversary of the Canadian branch of the Armenian General Benevolent Union. The AGBU in Canada is a member of the worldwide Armenian family, sharing its proud heritage. The AGBU is the world's largest nonprofit organization headquartered in New York City, with an annual budget of around $50 million made possible by countless benefactors. Each year, the AGBU is committed to making a difference in the lives of 500,000 people across Armenia, Nagorno-Karabakh, and in the Armenian diaspora. It has an active presence in 31 countries and 74 cities and addresses the needs of Armenians in traditional and progressive programs worldwide, from schools, scouts, camps, support for the arts, internships, virtual learning, and young professional networks. On their 60th anniversary, I want to salute the Armenian General Benevolent Union leadership, their volunteers, and benefactors. Hear, hear. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Mr. Speaker, in 1957, the largest Armenian not-for-profit organization in the world, the Armenian General Benevolent Union, set up shop in Montreal. It was the beginning of 60 years of an outstanding mission to serve the community through educational, cultural, social, sports, and humanitarian programs.
The AGBU is focused on becoming a second home to so many. They offer multi-age, multi-purpose programs and services to their own community, but also the community at large. L'Union Générale.
Education is one of the AGBU's top priorities. It supports schools like the Alex Manouchian School in Montreal. They came to the support of the Lebanese, Iraqis, Egyptians, and more recently Syrians to provide French language services and settlement services.
The Armenian General Benevolent Union in Canada for their 60th anniversary. Merci.
Thank you.
Honourable member for Willowdale.
Mr. Speaker, I'm honored to rise in the House today to mark Nowruz, celebrated by 300 million people with cultural roots in Western and Central Asia. This joyous holiday is a festive occasion that brings together people of different cultures and languages to welcome the spring. A 3,000-year-old tradition, Nowruz is by now also a deeply cherished holiday for thousands of Canadians from coast to coast to coast, including many in my riding of Willowdale. Many here in Canada gathered around the Half-Scene table to celebrate renewal and the arrival of new beginnings. Allow me to wish them a happy Nowruz. Also, I certainly hope and trust that today's tabling of a new budget by our government in a few hours will be inspired by the very same Nowruz spirit of renewal. It was the Persians, after all, who introduced banking and finance to the world, which seems fitting to mention today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, it's my honour to rise today on behalf of the Alberta Conservative Caucus to congratulate our friend and former colleague, Jason Kenney. Over the weekend, Jason was elected in convincing fashion as the leader of the Alberta PC Party. First elected to this House in 1997, Jason held many portfolios while he was an MP and cabinet minister, but leader of the Alberta PC Party might be the most important position he's ever held. Jason has been recognized for his tireless work ethic, and he's one of the strongest and most respected voices within the Conservative movement. My friend Brian Jean and Jason are now tasked with a monumental challenge in uniting the Conservative principal parties in Alberta. A task of this magnitude left to lesser individuals might not succeed. Their cooperation, understanding and dedication to all Albertans will be what puts our province back on track to prosperity to the benefit of all Canadians. The road may not always be smooth and there may be disagreements, but the outcome is too important and the stakes are too high. On behalf of the Alberta Conservative Caucus, I want to congratulate Jason on his victory, and we stand ready to restore the Alberta.
The honourable member for Lac Saint Louis.
Water Day gains in significance every year as it becomes more and more obvious that water, our most precious and life-giving resource, is under increasing pressure from population growth, overuse, pollution, and the drought and flooding effects of climate change. Au Canada,
We are fortunate in base boil water advisories, or by way of new and emerging contaminants entering our lakes, rivers, and streams.
critical mass of expertise in water resource management. World Water Day is an opportunity to remind ourselves that we are a water nation with a destiny to be a model in freshwater management and a leader in promoting global water security in an increasingly water-stressed world.
The honourable member for Vancouver East.
On International Women's Day, the universe lost a champion of social justice and a staunch advocate for women's rights with the passing of former Vancouver East MP Margaret Mitchell. In 1982, Margaret stood in Parliament and brought attention to the shameful reality that 10% of Canadian women were experiencing domestic violence and was laughed at by the men in the House. Unflinching, Margaret responded, "That's no laughing matter." It was a watershed moment that woke the consciousness of Canada. She was never afraid to take on issues. Margaret was the first MP who stood in the House demanding the federal government to redress the Chinese head tax. She challenged health authorities who wanted to stop the sale of Chinese barbecue pork and duck. Her legacy and fighting spirit will always be felt in Vancouver East. A condolences book is available, and I invite you to share your memories of Margaret with her family and friends.
Honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, as we have heard, there has been an attack on our mother parliament in Great Britain. There are reports of multiple casualties, including a police officer, in what is being considered a terrorist attack. While the details are still being confirmed, what is known is that today there has been an attack on democracy. Canada and the United Kingdom share many links, bonds, and traditions, including our head of state, our system of government, and now, unfortunately, modern attacks on our parliaments. The scenes out of London will no doubt bring back dark memories for many of us here in the House today. Our thoughts and prayers are with our colleagues across the Atlantic. We thank the police and the security forces that defend these Houses of Parliament, those in the UK, and all houses of democracy around the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Pierrefonds-Dollard.
It is with great sadness that we learned of today's incident at the Parliament of the United Kingdom. It was only last week that I and a delegation of colleagues travelled to London to reaffirm the importance of our long-standing partnership. An attack on Parliament is an attack on democracy itself. As members of this House know all too well, the democratic institutions of government can be targeted by those who seek to strike fear in the hearts and minds of our citizens. While reports are still coming in and details continue to be confirmed, we strongly condemn violence in any form. Canada and the United Kingdom are close friends and allies. We have a shared history, and many of us are bound by family ties. As Chair of the Canada United Kingdom Interparliamentary Association, and on behalf of all members of this House, I would like to share our thoughts and prayers with the British people, as well as with our colleagues and friends in the British Parliament. We stand with you.
Oral questions, questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, today in London, the UK Parliament is the scene of an attack all too familiar to many members of this House and those who work here. While there are still many questions yet to be answered around the circumstances, on behalf of the official opposition, I offer my sincere condolences and prayers to all of those who are affected. Will the Prime Minister join me in condemning these attacks and offer any and all support to our UK friends?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I thank the member for her statement and for her support. We were all saddened to learn about today's incident near the British Parliament in London and express my deepest condolences to the victims of this cowardly attack. The scene unfolding in London is one that is all too familiar to members of this House who were here 2.5 years ago.
The attack today against the Parliament of the United Kingdom is an attack on democracy for the world.
The seat of democracy is a cowardly and reprehensible act that we condemn in the strongest terms. Canada and the UK are close friends and allies, and our message to the citizens of the United Kingdom and our colleagues in the British Parliament is simple. We stand with you.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Canada has had for decades one of the strongest and most successful immigration and refugee programs in the world. And that is because we have detailed laws, passport requirements, borders, and visas, all to ensure that our system is fair and rules-based. This actually ensures the integrity and the success of our system. So will the Prime Minister strongly signal to all those who want to make Canada their home that they must follow the rules?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Canada is extraordinarily fortunate because we have citizens who understand that a strong immigration policy is a benefit to the country, but also requires a rigorous process and protected borders. That is why we are ensuring that all Canadian laws are being followed. We continue to make sure that our police agencies and border services have all the resources they need to deal with situations that arise, as, for example, are arising in Manitoba and in Quebec. And we continue to make sure that Canadians are confident that our system is strong and solid.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it was about a year ago the Prime Minister tried to push through changes to Parliament's rules to silence the opposition. Now, that attempt ended in complete failure and he had to back down. But yet, here he is again, at it again, wanting to centralize his power. This time he wants to shut down debate and he only wants to show up for question period 1 day a week. Why is the Prime Minister so determined to avoid accountability?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, we are pleased to put out a broad discussion paper on how we can make improvements to the functioning of this House of Commons so that members can better hold the government to account, so we can move forward on legislation, so we can make better work-life balance for the many individuals with young families in this House, do a better job of working efficiently here in Ottawa while serving our constituents back at home. I'm excited to be launching an open conversation for all members of this House to participate in, and I encourage the members opposite to continue to contribute their thoughtful ideas to this process.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, the Prime Minister's plan undermines the very principles of responsible and accountable government. The fact that the Prime Minister doesn't want to show up to answer questions more than once a week shows how little respect he has for Canada's Parliament. Now, as inconvenient as he thinks it is, Parliament is actually the seat of our democracy, and central to that is the role of the opposition. So can the Prime Minister explain to us why he's willing to undermine our system of democracy simply to get out of answering tough questions?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I'm always pleased to be here in this House to answer tough questions and easy ones like the member just asked me. The fact is we're always looking for ways to improve things, and as we reflect upon the seat of democracies in London, the fact is that we are put forward a broad range of proposals, including one.
Order, order. I'm having trouble hearing the answer. I know members are anxious to hear both the question and the answer. I ask members to cooperate and to maintain order. Right Honourable Prime Minister has the floor.
I'm happy to highlight that we're always open to improvements and ways to be able to hold this government to account, and that includes looking at where things are done elsewhere, including in Great Britain, in the UK, where the Prime Minister has an entire question period devoted to answering those questions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister is proposing, he's proposing to change the rules so he can actually silence the opposition. His plan is to restrict debate, shorten the work week, and limit his attendance to question period to 1 day a week. No one has ever attempted gutting accountability like this. So I'd like to ask him a simple question. What would he have done if Prime Minister Stephen Harper had proposed the same thing?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The previous government would not have put out an open discussion paper, would not have engaged with the opposition, have proposed months of discussion in committee on the best way to move forward. We are happy to be launching an open conversation on how to improve the functioning of this Parliament in a way that meets the needs of Canadian families and Canadian members of Parliament. The fact is, we're happy that we're launching in an open way an important conversation that apparently the members opposite really don't want to have.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
As is often the case, we didn't actually get an answer to the question from the Leader of the Opposition. This Prime Minister is going further than Stephen Harper would have ever dared to do, and telling Canadians he only wants to show up in question period once a week. So I'm going to ask the question again. What would the Prime Minister's reaction have been if Stephen Harper had dared to propose what he's proposing?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, the way we are going about this is by opening a discussion, an open conversation with the members opposite about how to...
Order, order. The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton and others, I know, will want to hear both the questions and the answers and will, I'm sure, manage to calm themselves. Both members in all parties can listen to what they hear, even when they don't like it, and not react. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I wonder about the school children in the gallery who are wondering at how effective this Parliament actually is right now. We are proposing ways to discuss how to improve the quality of debate and allow the government to be held to account in a thoughtful, responsible way, and this kind of shouting is what they get. That's not worthy of this Parliament. It's not worthy of the people they serve, Mr. Speaker.
That's right. The Honourable. The Honourable Member for Outremont.
We really could replace him with a cardboard cutout. And his peanut gallery would never notice the difference.
If the Prime Minister sincerely wants to work with the other parties, would he accept putting in place a proportional committee where no party could impose changes to their advantage? If he's so worried about the reaction of the students here today, will he stand up for once and show that he is a Democrat? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I am very happy to be able to welcome all the young people in the galleries today to announce that we are putting forward a budget that is going to help the middle class, that will ensure their future. That's what we should be talking about today, and we can see that it's possible to make points without having everyone speak at the same time. We can make good points all the same if only one person at a time is speaking. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Canadians are concerned about their future, and that's why we are happy to be able to present a budget which will invest in their future, which helps the middle class. And I'm looking forward to taking questions on what we are doing for Canadians, because that is what is required of us in our work, to serve Canadians. I ask the Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier to please calm down. The Honourable Member for Outremont. Mr. Speaker, a simple question. What penalty does the Prime Minister believe should be imposed on a minister who violates the Conflict of Interest Act? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect that all parliamentarians act with a high level of ethics and with irreproachable behaviour. We know that it's important to do that if we want to keep the trust of Canadians, that we take an approach that is worthy of the trust that Canadians have in us. The Honourable Member for Outremont. And when a minister breaks that confidence, what is the penalty? Instead of turning around, the Prime Minister should answer the question, Mr. Speaker.
To be clear, the Canadians believe that there's no problem with the Prime Minister taking a vacation, but Canadians do have a problem with the Prime Minister accepting illegal gifts, breaking the law, and then charging the taxpayers over $125,000. Does the Prime Minister honestly believe that paying back a mere $4,000 is enough when he blew over $125,000 of hard-earned taxpayers' money?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as is the custom for previous Prime Ministers, we repaid the cost of commercial equivalent flights. The fact is, for the first time, we actually put in place a system of rules that oversee that, because there was never that in previous parliaments or under previous Prime Ministers. The other fact is the RCMP makes determinations on how to protect the Prime Minister, and we will not second-guess the decisions of the Prime Minister that the RCMP makes.
The Honourable Member for Lanark Frontenac Kingston.
Well, if he gets his way, we really never will get to second-guess the Prime Minister. Right. The Prime Minister would put everybody's mind at ease if he would just agree that he won't use his majority to ram through changes to the standing orders without all-party consent. Unanimity has always been sought for changes to the rules that divide power between government and opposition. For example, the committee that Jean Chrétien set up to review the standing orders had unanimous consent written into its mandate. But this Prime Minister seems to feel that decades of precedents count for nothing. So my question to him is this: why the fuddle-duddle won't he commit to the long-standing practice that you don't change the rules without unanimous consent?
Members know we can't do indirectly what we can't say directly. And I'd encourage them to be judicious in their choice of words. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to rise and to respond to the member's question and to remind all Canadians that we have shared a discussion paper with members of Parliament as well as the public. This government, including myself, respects the work of a committee, and I believe that they had the opportunity to have an honest conversation. I actually appreciate a lot of the work that the member opposite has done. I know the committee sat late last night, and I know that conversation is starting. All we are asking is let's have a constructive conversation to really modernize the way this place works. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Banff Airdrie.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister once expressed his admiration for the basic dictatorship of China. Well, now it turns out that he's trying to bring that dictatorship to life right here in Canada. He's trying to avoid any accountability to Canadians by limiting debate and by giving the Liberals unprecedented control over the House of Commons and its committees. And on top of this, he wants to give all his Liberal MPs Fridays off, and it turns out he himself only wants to show up to work one day a week. So, Mr. Speaker, why does the Prime Minister have such a blatant disregard for being held accountable to Canadians.
Honourable Government House Leader.
As I have shared with members in this House as well as with Canadians, our objective has always been to ensure that Parliament is more relevant for Canadians, to ensure that we can make this place more efficient, more predictable, more transparent, and more accountable. That is the purpose of the discussion paper. It's a conversation we would like to have with all colleagues in this place. I'm also encouraging Canadians to be part of this conversation. As we all know, this place belongs to Canadians, and that's exactly who we're here to serve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, Canadians get up and go to work every morning to earn a living, and yet this government is thinking about cutting our working hours here in Ottawa. What a great example they're setting. Work less to spend more. What a great example, Mr. Speaker. Even thinking about it is immoral, and yet they claim that it's just a consultation. This Liberal government, will it get to work to create a prosperous Canada? Will this government respect all MPs and commit to getting unanimous consent for any rule changes? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, our government recognizes the importance and the important work that MPs do both here in this House and in their ridings. During the election campaign, we committed to modernizing Parliament to make it a workplace that is appropriate for the 21st century. Our goal is to ensure that Parliament be relevant to Canadians and that it be accountable, predictable and transparent. Thank you.
Chilliwack Hope.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals say they want to make Parliament more predictable. The only thing predictable around here is that the Liberals will do whatever it takes, including rigging the rules, to avoid accountability. Predictably, the Prime Minister only likes to show up to places where it's all selfies, slogans, and superficiality. So when he finds an opposition instead of an audience, he predictably heads for the exits, since he loves to be loved. Will the Liberal whip demand his MPs start applauding the Prime Minister more often so that he could be predicted to maybe show up here for question period more than once a week?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, a discussion paper that I released was made available for members of Parliament as well as Canadians. I believe it's a reasonable discussion paper encouraging members in this place to have a conversation, to have a discussion. The member opposite is misrepresenting the document as there's many ideas being shared. We would like to see people actually bringing and having a thoughtful conversation where we can have opposing views, but really come to modernizing this place and bringing it into the 21st century. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the government or the House Leader introduced a discussion paper and then mere days later tried to ram that and is currently ramming that discussion paper through Parliament. This is not a discussion. This is not a conversation. This is a dictatorship. I implore the House Leader, I implore the government, all we are asking for is that we will all be able to come in agreement as precedent has set before any major changes are made. I'm asking the government to reset this horrid mess they've created and listen to all of us before any changes are made.
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it is a discussion paper, and I encourage all members as well as the public to read it in its entirety. There are many great ideas, and we are asking the committee to actually broaden the scope of their study. We know that many ideas have already been presented. I have made myself part of that conversation. Every single member of Parliament is here to do important work for Canadians. We would like to make this place more relevant to Canadians, and I'm sure all members would agree that we can work better together. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Opposition House
This is unbelievable, Mr. Speaker, and there can only be one conclusion drawn. There's a quote I'm sure the Prime Minister is very familiar. It's solutions to important problems are decided not by party committee but by one individual. Well, you know who said that? Chinese dictator Chairman Mao. Well, you know what? Canada is not China. Canada is not a dictatorship. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is not the supreme emperor, so maybe he could do Canadians a favor, go take another vacation, and don't come back until he's ready to stop acting like those dictators.
Government House Leader. Order. Order.
Speaker, Canadians elected.
First of all, order. 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 I did not see that. Order. Order. The member for Grand Prairie Mackenzie will come to order. If I have heard lots of members heckling, I've heard lots of members yelling and heckling, and I've heard enough of it. The honourable Government House Leader has the floor. Order. This question period could be a lot shorter if it's not quiet. Order. Order. The Speaker can only see so much, folks. Order. And I can only put up with so much, and I'm looking in all directions. The Honourable Government House Leader has the floor. We'll have some order.
Mr. Speaker, I do believe that this is actually demonstrating more of a reason why this conversation and discussion is necessary. Every single member of Parliament is elected by their constituents to represent their voice in this place. It is important for us to have these conversations so that we can better serve the Canadians that we are here to represent. These are tough conversations, I agree, but I think they're important conversations for us to have, and that's why I released a discussion paper not only for members of Parliament, for the public to also participate in so that we can have the important conversations that we need to have. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Cowichan, Mellahut, Langford.
Mr. Speaker, in an unprecedented act, the federal government is dropping its judicial case against 36 individuals arrested in the largest anti-mafia sting since the Rizzuto case. Thanks to Liberal dithering, serious criminal charges are being either stayed or withdrawn. Is this the reason that the Liberal government is abandoning its case? Is the Minister of Justice going to throw 6 years of anti-mafia investigations in the trash because they refuse to provide proper resources for our justice system?
Yes. Honourable Minister of Justice.
Well, Mr. Speaker, decisions such as this are made by the Public Prosecution Service, which is independent of government, and I will say that there are still charges pending in this case. Further to that, I will use this opportunity again to talk about the reforms that we're making, the comprehensive review that we're taking to the criminal justice system, including sentencing reform, looking at bail reform. We introduced an open and transparent process for judges to ensure public safety, respect for victims, and respect for the Charter. I look forward to continuing this work.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, well, it's budget day and expectations are high when it comes to the future of thousands of jobs in the softwood lumber sector in Saguenay and across Quebec. We're still waiting for the government to show us a draft support plan for the forestry sector. The government has a unique opportunity to show that it's taken the possibility of a trade war with the United States seriously by showing a Plan B, for example, with loan guarantees. Will the government finally stand up once and for all to show that it's really ready to act to defend our forestry workers in Saguenay and Quebec? The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources. Mr. Speaker, as I said yesterday, Mr. Speaker, we recognize the importance of the forestry sector in Canada. We have started a very good conversation with the provinces who will be affected or could be affected by new measures. We will take concerted measures to protect jobs in Canada. Canadians can count on us.
Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister thinks he's elected royalty, and Canadians should lavish him with exotic island vacations, nannies, and a jet-setting lifestyle. The Prime Minister spent $127,000 on his island excursion with the Fam Jam and his BFFs. Unbelievable. $1,700 was spent alone on food and drinks for a 3-hour flight. Mr. Speaker, there's people in my riding that are struggling to pay the mortgage, but this Prime Minister thinks he's entitled to his caviar and champagne. Why does this wealthy trust fund Prime Minister think he can abuse taxpayers' dollars entertaining himself this way?
Terrible. Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as as was the case for previous prime ministers, including the former prime minister, for security reasons, the RCMP accompanies the prime minister, whether for personal or business purposes. It was this government that recognized that there was not a policy in place and asked the clerk of the Privy Council office to help set some guidelines. I would also like to remind the member that it was this government that lowered taxes on middle-class Canadians by increasing taxes on the wealthiest 1% of Canadians. Conservatives voted against that measure, but I'm sure the member would agree lowering of the middle-class tax cut has benefited hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, it's no wonder the Prime Minister only wants to be here one day a week. When you think you're elected royalty, you don't have to work, and the average Canadian can pick up the tab for your caviar and your champagne. But when the Prime Minister wants to fire up the old Challenger and jet off to an island and get away to entertain his friends, he just pulls out the old taxpayer credit card. Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister justify to Canadians why they're on the hook for his $127,000 vacation and his $1,700 snack bill?
Here, here. Honourable Government House Leader.
That lowered taxes on middle-class Canadians by increasing taxes on the wealthiest 1% of Canadians. Mr. Speaker, it was this government that introduced the Canada Child Benefit to help families with children that need it the most, to ensure that they get the most. It was this government that has taken unprecedented levels of public consultation so that we can respond to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing. In regards to the members' questions, when we took office, there was no guidelines in place. One of the first things we did was ask the clerk of the Privy Council office to put guidelines in place, and we will continue to do the good work Canadians expect us to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Beauport, Limoilou.
Rule and money, it's a question of principle and honor, and this government has none.
3 principles must guide a Prime Minister in his actions every day. He must be humble, he must show restraint, and he must manage the public purse with rigor. Mr. Speaker, when will this Prime Minister finally act with honor, set a good example, and stop wasting Canadians' money? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, as was the case with previous Prime Ministers, the RCMP security detail always accompanies the Prime Minister when the Prime Minister is traveling, whether that be for personal or business travel. One of the first things that we did after being elected was to ask the Clerk of the Privy Council to create guidelines around travel for the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's family and guests. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I'm interested to know how much the Finance Minister will put in the budget for the Prime Minister's future vacations to Billionaire Island. We just learned that it cost taxpayers $127,000 the last time, and that's before we add the cost of the Ethics Commissioner's investigation. When will the Prime Minister realize that real Canadians are struggling to make ends meet, and they can't afford and they don't want to pay for his lavish lifestyle?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Our government on a plan to grow the economy and strengthen the middle class, and we are delivering on that very commitment. Over the last 6 months, almost 220,000 jobs were created, majority of which were full-time jobs. This is the strongest 6 months of job growth in almost a decade. This is evidence that the plan that we have put in place is working. We will continue to make the necessary investments in Budget 2017 to continue to strengthen the middle class and those working hard to join it and to create the conditions for growth of our economy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the Liberals love to talk up the Canada Child Benefit. It was supposed to help 9 million children out of poverty. But in my riding, there are many families who have to jump through one hoop after another just to submit a claim. What good is a benefit if families that really need it aren't getting it? How many eligible parents have yet to receive the Canada Child Benefit? And when will this government shift its priorities from protecting the wealthiest to making life more affordable for all Canadians?
Minister of Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All members of this House are delighted with the introduction of the Canada Child Benefit, which is the most important social policy innovation in a generation, because we're not sending benefits and checks to families of millionaires anymore. We're able to help 9 families out of 10. This, Mr. Speaker, is a family of 6 million children across Canada with, on average, $200 per month, non-taxable, than the earlier inequitable tax system.
The member for Salaberry-Sirois. Mr. Speaker, the Service Alimentaire Communautaire, le SAC, has offered a unique food assistance service to families in Salaberry to Valleyfield since 2001, but it is at risk of closing its doors and leaving vulnerable families in need unless it gets emergency assistance from the federal government. A letter was sent to the minister a month ago. The organization and citizens in my riding are still waiting for an answer since then. More and more families in our region are having trouble feeding themselves. Last December, use of food banks went up by 300%. When does the minister plan to act? The Honourable Minister of Social Development. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government was elected on a commitment to grow the economy and grow the middle class, and to further help Canadians join the middle class. In that context, Mr. Speaker, today's budget will put forward an even more solid program in order to ensure that we have a more inclusive society and ensure that families that are having trouble in Canada can have a better chance to succeed. And I invite the member to listen carefully to what we are going to announce in a few minutes. Canadians are proud that their government takes openness and transparency seriously, and they appreciate that their government gets them involved to find solutions to problems. Now, it is the international community that is demonstrating its trust in Canada, in its leadership, and in its efforts to be open. Can the minister explain to the House Canada's new international role now that we have been elected to the steering committee for the Open Government Partnership?
Président du Conseil du Trésor.
President of the Treasury Board. Mr. Speaker, I am proud that Canada was elected by our international partners to one of the 4 seats of the steering committee of the Open Government Partnership. This partnership is an international organization that includes 315 countries and hundreds of civil society groups. We are going to contribute to promoting a worldwide movement towards a more open government and more accountable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Interlake East.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of National Defence has been playing fast and loose with the truth. First, it was the Liberals' fabricated fighter jet capability gap, which was really a Liberal credibility gap. Then the minister put an unprecedented gag order on D&D officials and stifled debate right here in Parliament. And now the Defence Minister says it wasn't him who cut danger pay from our troops fighting ISIS, but I have a document right here with his signature on it that proves it was. Will the minister come clean and apologize for misleading Canadians, or is he going to double down on his alternate facts?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Speaker, I understand that the member opposite might be feeling a little bit of guilt from at times when he was the parliamentary secretary, sending our troops overseas without the tax exemption, and that was the original question from yesterday. And we, as I told him very openly, that we looked at the problem in February 2016, sent a letter to the finance minister, we were able to get this changed. There are rules that are in place in 2014 that we are now reviewing so that we can make sure that when we send troops that they don't have to deal with this issue ever again. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Charlevoix, Haute-Saint-Charles. When I was a young man in the Army, I was taught to be honest. Unfortunately, this training wasn't given to everyone from what I've seen, because the minister distorts reality when it suits him. He invented a capability gap because that way he could buy Super Hornets from his friends at Boeing. And to justify his inaction, to improve the protection of cadets, he stated that they don't handle weapons anymore, whereas many cadets compete in shooting competitions. Will the minister stop misleading the House and apologize?
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of my service in the Canadian Armed Forces as a reservist. I'm proud of my service in the United States. I'm proud of my combat time. Every time I make a decision, Mr. Speaker, it's about thinking when I had the boots on the ground. And that's how I'll take every future decision. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Mr. Speaker, at festivals and events, consulates, and the Canadian Embassy in the U.S., cardboard cutouts of the Prime Minister started appearing. And much like the real-life version of the PM, there was plenty of selfies, but not much in the way of substance. The cutouts are so vain that the Prime Minister probably thinks a certain Carly Simon song was about him. When Canadian seniors and families are paying for the Liberals' tax and spend agenda, who thought a cutout was a good idea, and how much did it cost? What was the Prime Minister thinking, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The promotional item in question was at the discretion of our missions in the United States. The missions have been asked to no longer use these for their events. Regardless, Mr. Speaker, under this government, Canada is re-engaging in the world to champion the values that Canadians hold dear, both at here and abroad. This includes taking all opportunities to engage with our international counterparts, including the United States, Canada's partner and ally. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Turns out the cutouts became an international embarrassment to the Liberals because of inappropriate things that people were doing and posting on social media. Global Affairs ordered the life-size effigies taken down as Liberals knew that they were tarnishing the Prime Minister's celebrity persona. And now the government is refusing to tell Canadians how much it costs. Mr. Speaker, in just over an hour, Canadians will find out how much more will be lifted from their wallets to pay for frivolous and out-of-control Liberal spending. Who authorized this half-baked idea, and what were they smoking?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Monsieur le Président, cette fois en français.
Mr. Speaker, this time in French. This was done at the discretion of our mission in the United States, and they were asked to no longer use them for events. In spite of all that, Mr. Speaker, our government is ensuring that Canada is re-engaging in the world to promote Canadians' values, including seizing all opportunities to engage with our international counterparts, including the United States, our ally and friend. Thank you.
Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, the Calgary Olympic Bid Exploration Committee is making plans to include Banff's Lake Louise ski area in their 2026 bid. Putting the Olympic Games into Canada's oldest national park would require expanding the resort into protected natural areas. The Environment Minister has been silent about whether she'd permit Olympic expansion in this UNESCO World Heritage Site. Will she stand today and firmly reject any further development in Banff National Park?
Honourable Minister of Sport and Persons with Disabilities.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the member for his questions. Canada has a rich and proud history of hosting both the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Any bid from any city and province will definitely be looked at within the context of its submission, including under an international hosting sports strategy and policy. We'll make a decision once we have all the information, once we have government guarantees, and certainly taking into consideration where this event is proposed to be hosted. Thank you.
A member for Courtenay Alberni.
4 months ago, a South Korean cargo ship lost 35 containers at sea, and potentially harmful debris is still arriving every day on Vancouver Island's west coast. Large pieces of metal and chunks of styrofoam are contaminating our sensitive ecosystems. The Liberal government continues to delay and refuses to act. Community volunteers have been forced to start cleanup efforts themselves. Now we learn the government received $72,000 from the company to clean up the mess, but they still haven't released the funds. Will the government finally step up, do their job, and clean up the mess?
Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, occasionally incidents such as this do happen, and we have made it clear to the owner of the ship that they are responsible for the cleanup, and we will make sure that that does happen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Parry Sound Muskoka.
The spectacle in the House today was not a good one for the Prime Minister. He's there laughing and heckling and over-talking the Conservative House Leader when she's trying to make a pertinent point about the future of parliamentary democracy in this country. The Prime Minister treats this chamber as his personal chew toy, Mr. Speaker. We are going to stand in our place. We're going to fight for democracy. We're going to fight for Canadian rights. When is the Prime Minister going to be on our side and live up to his promises in the last election, rather than throwing it all out the window for his own personal gain, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate once again the opportunity to rise in this House and to talk about an important discussion paper that I presented to members of Parliament as well as the public, an important conversation that needs to take place. It's important that we read the document in its entirety. I remember when I was growing up that I talked about change and the importance of change, and I remember a good friend of mine saying to me that change starts with me. Every single one of us have a responsibility to Canadians to be part of this conversation. I know we can have a good conversation, a meaningful, constructive conversation, and I encourage all members to be part of it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Provencher.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals campaigned on a promise of real change. This is real change, a move from democracy to, what is this, dictatorship? The Chinese style of dictatorship that this Prime Minister seems to prefer is creeping its way into committees. Discussions are more like directives. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Vice Chair of the Standing Committee for the Procedures and House Affairs, what is the schedule, what is the agenda, what are the priorities of the Committee of the Procedure of House Affairs?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Vice Chair.
Mr. Speaker, as we speak, opposition MPs continue to stand up to defend Canadians from the Liberal attack on democracy. Not only does that Prime Minister only want to have to show up to be accountable to Canadians one day a week, but I've never seen a more pathetic display of arrogance than I saw in question period today as he laughed and smirked as opposition MPs tried to hold him accountable for his actions. I can assure him, Mr. Speaker, that in the next election, Canadians will wipe that smirk right off his face.
Honourable member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister purports to be a feminist. Yet when a strong, confident woman dares to question his arrogance and unilaterally changing the fundamentals of Canadian democracy, he tries to stare her down and yell at her, Mr. Speaker. So will this so-called feminist stand up and apologize to my colleagues, or will he once again make a woman do his dirty work for him?
Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud to be a strong woman that's been empowered by a government to have a voice and help create the change that we were elected to create. This House, it's clear, this House needs modernization. This House needs this conversation. This House needs a solid, substantial discussion, and that's exactly what I'm encouraging all of us to do. Each of us has a role. Each of us represents a riding. We represent Canadians all together. Let's work better together, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Preston Chesapeake. Mr. Speaker, today I have the honour of speaking about young community leaders that are part of my riding's youth council. They are especially interested by the environment, and they want to know how they can better engage to help the government.
Climate change, if she could share with the House how the young people in Canada could get more involved and play a bigger role in climate change. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Environment.
I want to thank the member for Sackville-Preston Chesapeake for his question. It's unfortunate that our young people are already seeing the impact of climate change on their communities, and I'm very pleased that they are part of the solution by reducing waste, by favoring sustainable transportation, and protecting natural spaces.
Canadians to submit their bold ideas for clean growth to the North American Youth Innovation Challenge.
Winners will receive $5,000 and will have a chance to pitch their innovation to myself and my counterparts from Mexico and the United States.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, now that the Minister of Canadian Heritage has not denied that 87% of approved Canada 150 projects are in Liberal ridings in Quebec, can she explain to the House why the objectives and criteria of the Canada 150 program were changed during the summer of 2016? Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister find it acceptable to change the criteria and objectives of a program that is ongoing? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are very enthusiastic about celebrating the 150th. We've received thousands of projects valued at over $200 million, whereas we have not enough funds to fund them all. Canadians are aware celebrations are organized around 4 themes: youth, the environment, inclusion, diversity, as well as reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. And I'm happy to say that Canadians are going to be celebrating, and there's been a fair regional distribution, and 2017 will be a great year. The member for Hochelaga. In my riding, the Harmony Project has received funding since 1999 from the Community Action Program for Children in order to offer services to youth in situations of extreme vulnerability or having problems with street gangs. After a serious and internal crisis, which they recognized, the organization's funding was cut. Project Harmony is now up and running again and wants to reestablish its partnership with the Public Health Agency. Will the Minister act to support this important project? The Honourable Minister of Health.
I assume that the member opposite was speaking about the Community Action Fund, and I know that I've heard from several members of this House about the importance of the Community Action Fund. The Public Health Agency of Canada is making sure that all programs that are doing this good work and this important work are making sure that they have the resources that are necessary for them, working with the provinces and territories in that regard, and we look forward to continuing to support this kind of work.
For Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, in my riding of Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, I see more and more entrepreneurs and businesses either starting up something new in the clean tech sector or creating a business line that offers clean tech innovation. In a recent report on BC's clean tech sector, it was reported that there are now 273 clean tech companies with 8,650 jobs based in BC. These companies are diversified and operate in everything from transportation to agriculture. Mr. Speaker, could the Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development please share with us what the government is doing to support this sector and create good quality jobs?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member from Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge for his question, his leadership on this file. Last week, I was in beautiful British Columbia and saw firsthand the diversity of this innovative economy, especially the vibrant clean tech sector. You know, Mr. Speaker, the member opposite has highlighted the leadership role that BC is playing in clean tech with the number of companies, the number of jobs, and these are good quality jobs that on average pay $84,000, Mr. Speaker. That is why our government invested $58 million in clean tech jobs, because this is about addressing the problems of tomorrow and creating good quality jobs today.
The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Official Languages Commissioner tabled a report revealing a shortage of bilingual officers in Canadian airports. Employees that speak French represent less than 9% of staff in Vancouver, Edmonton, and Toronto. The Official Languages Act stipulates that all Canadians that go through an airport in this country should be able to be served in the language of their choice. Upholding a law is an obligation, not an option. When will the Minister of Transport ensure that official languages are respected by those employees targeted? The Minister of Transport.
Done.
Mr. Speaker, bilingualism is very important for our government, and upholding official languages is as well. Federal services that are offered should be offered by respecting the Official Languages Act. Safety in our airports is important. And Services must be offered in both languages with courtesy and respect. Thank you.
Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the International Energy Agency have all urged governments around the world to do two things at a minimum: to put in place a carbon price and to eliminate all fossil fuel subsidies. I wonder if the Prime Minister can update us on where we are. We know that progress is being made on the carbon price. Where are we on eliminating fossil fuel subsidies?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Speaker, I'm glad for the question, especially on Budget Day, because it gives us the chance to reflect back to Budget 2016. The commitments that were made include $81 billion over 11 years in public transit, green infrastructure and transportation, and smart cities. We're committed to transitioning to a low-carbon economy while encouraging businesses to innovate, grow, and create good, well-paying jobs for Canadians. I'm sure all members will be very anxious to hear what the Finance Minister will have to say on this subject only minutes from now.
This will conclude question period for today. The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill is rising on a point of order.
Speaker, our purpose during question period is to question to the government and hold them to account. After asking a question today, the government House Leader looked at me and said, "I'm going to get you for this."
Unbelievable.
In that sense, I believe that my privilege and others here has been violated, and as such, I task you and ask you to look into this matter.
Bullying, that's bullying.
The Honourable Government House Leader is rising on the same point of order. 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 We're going to hear the comment.
As I have said in this House time and time again, I have the utmost respect for this place. No such comment was made, and if the member feels that was the case, I have no problem working and having the conversation with her. I personally was surprised at the response after their response of what we were getting, but I do believe we can work better in this. Mr. Speaker.
I will review the blues and the recordings and come back to the House. Tabling of the
Honourable Member for Montcalm on a point of order. Mr. Speaker, when a member feels offended or deeply wounded by comments in the House, when the debate runs counter to the very nature of their work, and so they have to stand up immediately and say, so I have a question of privilege. This is for everyone, intended for everyone. I humbly put this point. I heard the leader of the official opposition say that the government's reform, procedural reform, was being done in a dictatorial way. I heard the government leader say she was open to discussing and having all parliamentarians participate in the process. I'd like to point out to this House humbly that to hear this kind of debate going on, but since October 19, 2015, we've been excluded from the debate. We've been ostracized as members of Parliament because we cannot participate in any committee, including the Procedure and House Affairs Committee. So what I'm saying today, Mr. Speaker, humbly, is that if we are to reform the standing orders, I imagine it should be done according to parliamentary democracy. And as such, no one should oppose our having a right to participate, as was the case with the Committee on Electoral Reform. And it is deeply offensive to hear people who may have millions of dollars to express their own voices and to represent their constituents. But I was legitimately elected by tax-paying citizens, and I have the right, if there is to be parliamentary reform, I have the right to have a place on that committee. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Montcalm for his question of privilege.
Alors, la question.
Order. The matter is before the committee, and I would ask the member to bring that question before the committee. The committee will decide who may become members of that. I fully agree with my colleague from the Bloc Québécois. This is a problem, but I think it's a problem that there is a solution for.
Statement, would you start again, please?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I merely said that je suis tout à fait.
I fully agree with my colleague, the member from the Bloc Québécois, because we have the same problem, obviously, the Green Party. I'm all alone. I'm the sole member, but the Green Party is a parliamentary party.
In the process of changing the rules, and we recognize that the motion before the committee at the moment recognizes that parties that do not sit on the committee as a caucus have some ability to participate. But we are not at this point informed as what that ability would be. And unfortunately, the discussion paper itself makes a large mistake in vocabulary in describing members of the Bloc and members of the Green Party as though we were independents, which we are not. I see you raising, Mr. Speaker.
Thank the honourable member for her comment. I see the honourable member, honourable député de Bécancour.
The honourable member for Bécancour is rising on the same point. Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to add that this is the only Western democracy in the world where members are treated in two different ways, where there's a double standard. It doesn't happen in any other provinces or in any other Western democracy. It's time to right this wrong. I'd like to thank the honourable member for his comments. Tabling of documents.
Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 36, Bracket 8, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's response to 5 petitions.
Dépôt de projet de loi émanant du gouvernement.
Introduction of government bills, statements by ministers, reports from interparliamentary delegations.
From committees, the honourable member for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honour to present in both official languages the third report of the Standing Committee on Industry, Science and Technology, entitled Bill C-25, an Act to amend the Canada Business Corporations Act, the Canada Cooperatives Act, the Canada Not-for-Profit Cooperations Act, and the Competition Act.
Introduction of private members' bills. First reading of Senate public bills. Motions. Presenting petitions. Présentation de pétitions. The honourable member for Foothills.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to submit a petition from more than 1,600 residents of Alberta. Many of us in this House will remember 2013 June, the flood which devastated many communities in my riding, including High River. But what made that flood more damaging to the community was the actions of the RCMP after the flood, where they allegedly illegally entered more than 4,600 homes in the community. And the undersigned of this petition are asking that the government look into and determine if any of these were unwarranted entries. They violated the privacy rights and property rights of the High River residents, determine if these entries were contrary to any provisions of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and debate and vote on a motion calling on the government to rebuild trust within the RCMP among High River residents by holding an independent judicial inquiry into the legal justification for the RCMP entering 4,600 homes in High River. Thank you.
For the honourable member for Prince George, Peace River. Oh, excuse me. Honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to table a petition signed by hundreds of young students from my riding of Vancouver Kingsway and in the greater Vancouver area who are petitioning this House to draw our attention to the fact that Nestle is taking water from Hope, BC, and they're only paying the price of $2.25 per million litres. That's less than a chocolate bar price. From this, they are making huge profits off our water. The petitioners point out that there are numerous droughts and wildfires that happened in BC recently, and they ask that our House consider stopping Nestle and other big companies and conserve our water for future generations to come. And they want us to encourage the public to start using reusable bottles and stop buying plastic bottles. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the students of Windermere High School in my riding for their wonderful concern about the environment and our fresh water supplies.
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to present a petition in regards to palliative care and the approach that is needed to improve the quality of life of patients and their families. And while I'm on my feet, I move, seconded by the member for Leeds, Grenfell, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes, that the House proceed to orders of the day. Thank you.
Ms. Bergen, seconded by Mr. Brown, moves that the House proceed to orders of the day. All those in favor of the motion will please say yea. Yay. All those opposed will please say nay. Yay. In my opinion, the yeas have it. Call on the members. La question est la suivante.
The question is as follows. Ms. Bergen, seconded by Mr. moves that the House now moves on to the orders of the day. All those who support the motion, please rise.
Monsieur Trudeau.
Monsieur Trudeau.
Mr. Hare.
Mr. Hare.
Ms. Qualtrough.
Ms. Qualtrough.
Mr. Sadgett.
Mr. Sadgett.
Mrs. Philpott.
Mrs. Philpott.
Mr. Goodale.
Mr. Goodale.
Madame Joly.
Madame Joly.
Monsieur Champagne.
Monsieur Champagne.
Monsieur Leblanc.
Monsieur Leblanc.
Ms. Chager.
Ms. Chager.
Ms. Foote.
Ms. Foote.
Mr. Morneau.
Mr. Morneau.
Mr. Bryson.
Mr. Bryson.
Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Mr. Macaulay Cardigan.
Mr. Macaulay Cardigan.
Madame Le Boutillier.
Madame Le Boutillier.
Madame Bibeau.
Madame Bibeau.
Mr. Hussein.
Mr. Hussein.
Ms. McKenna.
Ms. McKenna.
Mr. Baines.
Mr. Baines.
Ms. Haidu.
Ms. Haidu.
Ms. Bennett.
Ms. Bennett.
Mr. Case returned to Ms. Mahaichuk.
Ms. Mahaichuk.
Mr. Casey Cumberland Colchester.
Mr. Casey Cumberland Colchester.
Ms. Fry.
Ms. Fry.
Mr. Nault.
Mr. Nault.
Mr. Eiking.
Mr. Eiking.
Mrs. Romanato.
Mrs. Romanato.
Monsieur Lauzon, Argenteuil, La Petite Nation.
Monsieur Lauzon, Argenteuil, La Petite Nation.
Monsieur Rioux.
Monsieur Rioux.
Monsieur Lightbound.
Monsieur Lightbound.
Mr. Holland.
Mr. Holland.
Mr. Casey, Charlottetown.
Mr. Casey, Charlottetown.
Mr. Leslie.
Mr. Leslie.
Gould.
Ms. Gould.
Mr. Carr.
Mr. Carr.
Ms. Monsef.
Ms. Monsef.
Monsieur Rodriguez.
Monsieur Rodriguez.
Mr. Sohi.
Mr. Sohi.
Mr. Garneau.
Monsieur Garneau.
Ms. Duncan, Etobicoke North.
Ms. Duncan, Etobicoke North.
Monsieur Duclos.
Monsieur Duclos.
Ms. Murray.
Ms. Murray.
Ms. Cara.
Ms. Cara.
Mrs. Caesar Chavan.
Mrs. Caesar Chavan.
Monsieur Cormier.
Monsieur Cormier.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Monsieur Lametti.
Monsieur Lametti.
Mr. Cusner.
Mr. Cusner.
Mr. Bagnall.
Mr. Bagnall.
Mr. Paradzi.
Mr. Paradzi.
Mr. McGinty.
Mr. McGinty.
Mr. Scarpellegia.
Mr. Scarpellegia.
Mr. Sims.
Mr. Sims.
Ms. Ratanzi.
Ms. Ratanzi.
Mr. Jesnevsky.
Mr. Jesnevsky.
Mr. Dhaliwal.
Mr. Dhaliwal.
Mr. Shifkate.
Mr. Shifkate.
Mr. Varani.
Mr. Varani.
Ms. Goldsmith-Jones.
Ms. Goldsmith-Jones.
Mr. Fillmore.
Mr. Fillmore.
Mr. DeCourcy.
Mr. DeCourcy.
Mr. Beach.
Mr. Beach.
Ms. Rudd.
Ms. Rudd.
Mr. Duguid.
Mr. Duguid.
Mr. Miller, Ville-Marie, le Sud-Ouest et des Sœurs.
Monsieur Miller, Ville-Marie, le Sud-Ouest, Île des Sœurs.
Mr. Lamoureux.
Mr. Lamoureux.
Monsieur McKinnon-Gatineau.
Monsieur McKinnon, Gatineau.
Mrs. McCrimmon.
Mrs. McCrimmon.
Ms. Petitpas-Taylor.
Ms. Petitpas-Taylor.
Mr. Vaughn.
Mr. Vaughn.
Mr. Mendocino.
Mr. Mendocino.
Mr. Blair.
Mr. Blair.
Monsieur Poisson.
Monsieur Poisson.
Ms. Hutchings.
Ms. Hutchings.
Ms. Young.
Ms. Young.
Mr. Pescasolido.
Mr. Pescasolido.
Madame Mendez.
Madame Mendez.
Mr. Oliphant.
Mr. Oliphant.
Monsieur Dubourg.
Monsieur Dubourg.
Mr. Alday.
Mr. Alday.
Ms. Alislev.
Ms. Alislev.
Mr. Amos.
Mr. Amos.
Monsieur Arsenault.
Monsieur Arsenault.
Mr. Aria.
Mr. Aria.
Monsieur Ayoub.
Monsieur Ayoub.
Monsieur Bayless.
Monsieur Bayless.
Mr. Chan.
Mr. Chan.
Mr. Biddle.
Mr. Biddle.
Mr. Boissonneau.
Mr. Boissonneau.
Mr. Bossio.
Mr. Bossio.
Mr. Bertina.
Mr. Bertina.
Mr. Breton.
Mr. Breton.
Mr. Chen.
Mr. Chen.
Mr. Brusen.
Mr. Brusen.
Ms. Demoff.
Ms. Demoff.
Ms. Dillon.
Ms. Dillon.
Monsieur Diorio.
Monsieur Diorio.
Monsieur Drouin.
Monsieur Drouin.
Ms. Tassi.
Ms. Tassi.
Ms. Zerowitz.
Ms. Zerowitz.
Mr. Assassi.
Mr. Assassi.
Monsieur Elkoury.
Monsieur Elkoury.
Mr. Ellis.
Mr. Ellis.
Mr. Erskine Smith.
Mr. Erskine Smith.
Mr. Ailson.
Mr. Ailson.
Monsieur Fergus.
Mr. Fergus.
Mr. Finnegan.
Mr. Finnegan.
Mr. Fisher.
Mr. Fisher.
Mr. Fonseca.
Mr. Fonseca.
Mr. Fragascados.
Mr. Fragascados.
Mr. Fraser West Nova.
Mr. Fraser West Nova.
Mr. Fraser Central Nova.
Mr. Fraser Central Nova.
Mr. Fuhrer.
Mr. Fuhrer.
Mr. Garrettson.
Mr. Garrettson.
Mr. Gerwall.
Mr. Gerwall.
Mr. Hardy.
Mr. Hardy.
Monsieur Graham.
Mr. Graham.
Mr. Harvey.
Mr. Harvey.
Mr. Housefather.
Mr. Housefather.
Monsieur Yacono.
Monsieur Yacono.
Mrs. Jordan.
Mrs. Jordan.
Mr. Johari.
Mr. Johari.
Mr. Kong.
Mr. Kong.
Ms. Khalid.
Ms. Khalid.
Madame Lapointe.
Madame Lapointe.
Monsieur Lefebvre.
Monsieur Lefebvre.
Monsieur Lemieux.
Monsieur Lemieux.
Mr. Levitt.
Mr. Levitt.
Mrs. Lockhart.
Mrs. Lockhart.
Mr. Long.
Mr. Long.
Mr. Longfield.
Mr. Longfield.
Ms. Ludwig.
Ms. Ludwig.
Mr. Maloney.
Mr. Maloney.
Monsieur Massé, Avignon, La Matisse, Matin, Matipédia.
Monsieur Massé, Avignon, La Métis, Matan, Matapédia.
Mr. May, Cambridge.
Mr. May, Cambridge.
Mr. McDonald.
Mr. McDonald.
Mr. McKinnon, Coquitlam, Park Coquitlam.
Mr. McKinnon, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam.
McLeod, Northwest Territories.
Mr. McLeod, Northwest Territories.
Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Morrissey.
Madame Nassif.
Madame Nassif.
Ms. O'Connell.
Ms. O'Connell.
Mr. Oliver.
Mr. Oliver.
Mr. O'Regan.
Mr. O'Regan.
Mr. Ouellet.
Monsieur Ouellet.
Mr. Peterson.
Mr. Peterson.
Monsieur Picard.
Monsieur Picard.
Mr. Robillard.
Mr. Robillard.
Mr. Rumi.
Mr. Rumi.
Mr. Rusnak.
Mr. Rusnak.
Ms. Sahota.
Ms. Sahota.
Mr. Saini.
Mr. Saini.
Monsieur Sanson.
Monsieur Sanson.
Mr. Sanga.
Mr. Sanga.
Mr. Sarai.
Mr. Sarai.
Mrs. Schultz.
Mrs. Schultz.
Mr. Sedi.
Mr. Sedi.
Mr. Sheehan.
Mr. Sheehan.
Mr. Sidhu, Mission Matsky, Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Sido, Mission Matsky, Fraser Canyon.
Return to Ms. Sidhu, Brampton South.
Ms. Sido, Brampton South.
Mr. Sobera.
Mr. Sobera.
Mr. Spengeman.
Mr. Spengeman.
Mr. Tabera.
Mr. Tabera.
Mr. Tan.
Mr. Tan.
Mr. Van Dam.
Mr. Vada.
Ms. Vandenbelt.
Ms. Vandenberg.
Mr. Whalen.
Mr. Whalen.
Mrs. Said.
Mrs. Zaid.
Mr. Rhoda.
Mr. Rota.
Ms. Ambrose.
Ms. Ambrose.
Mr. Nicholson.
Mr. Nicholson.
Ms. Finley.
Ms. Finley.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Mrs. Block.
Mrs. Block.
Mr. Bazan.
Mr. Bazan.
Mrs. McLeod, Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
Mrs. McLeod, Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
Mr. Clement.
Mr. Clement.
Mr. Deltel.
Mr. Deltel.
Ms. Bergen.
Ms. Bergen.
Monsieur Lebel.
Mr. Lebel.
Ms. Watts.
Ms. Watts.
Mr. Kent.
Mr. Kent.
Mr. Straw.
Mr. Straw.
Ms. Rempel.
Ms. Rempel.
Mr. Fast.
Mr. Fast.
Mr. Poilievre.
Mr. Poilievre.
Mr. Van
Mr.
Loan.
Van Loan.
Mr. Tilson.
Mr. Tilson.
Mrs. Gallant.
Mrs. Gallant.
Mr. Warwa.
Mr. Warwa.
Mr. Clark.
Mr. Clark.
Mr. Polis.
Mr. Polis.
Mr. Allison.
Mr. Allison.
Mr. Workington.
No,
Mr. Carey.
Mr. Carey.
Mr. Reed.
Mr. Reed.
Mr. Workington.
Mr. Workington.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown.
Mrs. Vecchio.
Mrs. Vecchio.
Mr. Abultayev.
Mr. Abultayev.
Mrs. Wong.
Mrs. Wong.
Ms. Gladu.
Ms. Gladu.
Mr. Broussard.
Mr. Broussard.
Mr. Sorensen.
Mr. Sorensen.
Mr. Lake.
Mr. Lake.
Mr. Lozon, Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry.
Mr. Lozon, Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry.
Mr. Lukiski.
Mr. Lukiski.
Mr. Albrecht.
Mr. Albrecht.
Mr. Calkins.
Mr. Calkins.
Mr. Shipley.
Mr. Shipley.
Mr. Van Kesteren.
Mr. Van Kesteren.
Mr. Dreeshen.
Mr. Dreeshen.
Mr. McKenzie.
Mr. McKenzie.
Mr. Sweet.
Mr. Sweet.
Madame Boucher.
Madame Boucher.
Mr. Law.
Mr. Law.
Monsieur Généreux.
Mr. Généreux.
Monsieur Gold.
Order. The pages will not bring the documents in now. You have to wait. We're finishing. The vote is over. Order. Carry on.
Monsieur Gould.
Monsieur Gould.
Mr. Richards.
Mr. Richards.
Mr. Hoback.
Mr. Hoback.
Mr. Sopa.
Mr. Sopa.
Mr. Stanton.
Mr. Stanton.
Mr. Albus.
Mr. Albus.
Mr. Zimmer.
Mr. Zimmer.
Mr. Falk.
Mr. Falk.
Mr. McGuire.
Mr. McGuire.
Mr. Barlow.
Mr. Barlow.
Mr. Yerdega.
Mr. Yerdega.
Mr. Aglinski.
Mr. Aglinski.
Mr. Arnold.
Mr. Arnold.
Mr. Berthold.
Mr. Berthold.
Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Diaz.
Mr. Diaz.
Mr. Jenis.
Mr. Jenis.
Mr. General.
Mr. General.
Ms. Harder.
Ms. Harder.
Monsieur Godin.
Monsieur Godin.
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Kitchen.
Mr. Kitchen.
Mr. Comich.
Mr. Comich.
Mr. McCauley, Edmonton West.
Mr. McCauley, Edmonton West.
Mr. Leipert.
Mr. Leipert.
Monsieur Blaney, Bellechasse des Etchemins-Lévis.
Monsieur Blaney, Bellechasse des Etchemins-Lévis.
Mr. Nader.
Mr. Nader.
Mr. Soroya.
Mr. Soroya.
Mr. Schmale.
Mr. Schmale.
Mr. Shields.
Mr. Shields.
Mrs. Stubbs.
Mrs. Stubbs.
Mr. Vierson.
Mr. Vierson.
Mrs. Wagenthal.
Mrs. Wagenthal.
Mr. Waugh.
Mr. Waugh.
Mr. Weber.
Mr. Weber.
Mr. Motts.
Mr. Motts.
Mr. O'Brien.
Mr. O'Brien.
Mr. Trost.
Mr. Trost.
Monsieur Mulcair.
Monsieur Mulcair.
Madame Laverdière.
Madame Laverdière.
Mr. Rankin.
Mr. Rankin.
Ms. Duncan, Edmonton Strathcona.
Ms. Duncan, Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Christopherson.
Mr. Christopherson.
Madame
Madame Brosseau.
Mr. Davies.
Mr. Davies.
Mr. Donnelly.
Mr. Donnelly.
Mr. Garrison.
Mr. Garrison.
Madame Boutin-Sweet.
Madame Boutin-Sweet.
Ms. Matheson.
Ms. Matheson.
Monsieur Dubé.
Monsieur Dubé.
Madame Quash.
Madame Quash.
Monsieur Dussault.
Monsieur Dussault.
Ms. Kwan.
Ms. Kwan.
Mr. Blakey.
Mr. Blakey.
Ms. Benson.
Ms. Benson.
Mr. Stewart.
Mr. Stewart.
Mr. Duval.
Mr. Duval.
Monsieur Nantel.
Monsieur Nantel.
Ms. Malcolmson.
Ms. Malcolmson.
Mr. Saganash.
Mr. Saganash.
Ms. Ramsey.
Ms. Ramsey.
Madame Sans-Souci.
Madame Sans-Souci.
Monsieur Choquette.
Monsieur Choquette.
Madame Trudel.
Madame Trudel.
Mr. Julian.
Mr. Julian.
Mr. Weir.
Mr. Weir.
Ms. Ashton.
Ms. Ashton.
Mr. Cannings.
Mr. Cannings.
Mr. Johns.
Mr. Johns.
Mr. Angus.
Mr. Angus.
Mr. McGregor.
Mr. McGregor.
Ms. Blaney, North Island, Powell
Ms.
River.
Blaney, North Island, Powell River.
Ms. Hardcastle.
Ms. Hardcastle.
Mr. Stetsky.
Mr. Stetsky.
Madame Hughes.
Madame Hughes.
Monsieur Plamondon.
Monsieur Plamondon.
Monsieur Marcel.
Monsieur
Madame
Marcel.
Madame Posé.
Madame Posé.
Monsieur Fortin.
Monsieur Fortin.
Monsieur Thériault.
Monsieur Thériault.
Monsieur Beaulieu.
Monsieur Beaulieu.
Madame Gill.
Madame Gill.
Monsieur Boudria.
Monsieur Boudria.
Ms. May, Sandwich Gulf Islands.
Ms. May, Sandwich Gulf Islands.
Motion will please rise.
Ms. Bergen.
Ms. Bergen.
Monsieur Dubé.
Monsieur Dubé.
I'll announce the result first. Yeas pour 300, 300, nays contre 2, 2.
I declare the motion carried. The honourable member for the honourable opposition whip is rising.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I know members were very enthusiastic about voting today, but in the process of the vote that we just took, we had a couple of members, the opposition House Leader and the Democratic Party Deputy House Leader, voted twice. Maybe they might want to clarify what their vote is.
The opposition House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to vote yes on that. Mr. Speaker, the reason for this vote is because if the Liberals have their way, this will be the last budget where the opposition will be able to hold them to account.
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly is rising on a point of order. Yes, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to take this opportunity to clarify that I wanted to vote yes.
About unilateral moves and privilege, I would point out that some members receive their budgets before others, and I think in the spirit of what we're debating today about the government wanting to do things on its own and not include the opposition, I think that's a great point to raise as well.
Member has raised a point of order. I thank the member for Belleuil-Chambly for his point of order. In fact, the pages were instructed earlier today to distribute the documents. We're not going to blame the pages for this. I will certainly take responsibility for this. We have an unusual circumstance, as we know, and I have previously seen documents distributed before the speech actually begins. However, the
honourable member for Louis-Saint-Laurent is rising on a point of order. A question of privilege, Mr. Speaker. A question of privilege. We all recognize the important work that is done by the pages, and this does not personally concern them. However, Mr. Speaker, you'll see, Mr. Speaker, as I do, that here in the official opposition, you'll see as I do that the official opposition, the second opposition party, the Bloc Québécois and the Green Party are applauding for the pages. However, the government side has sat on their hands. Mr. Speaker, what happened earlier is completely unacceptable. Unacceptable, Mr. Speaker, because the budget is very serious. The Department of Finance is held to secrecy. All parliamentarians who are consulted on the budget are held to secrecy. This could be it can be a criminal offense if that secrecy is violated. Well, we have something that's never happened before. Here, the document, this precious document, has been distributed during a vote. And that to dozens and dozens of government members. They have access to the document before all parliamentarians and before the minister has risen. That's unacceptable, Mr. Speaker, and light must be shed on this. Order. I'd like to thank the honourable member from Louis-Saint-Laurent for raising this question of privilege. I see the honourable member for Victoria rising on the same question.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I just wish to, on behalf of the New Democratic Party, associate ourselves with the remarks from the member of Louis-Saint-Laurent. I believe you'll, Mr. Speaker, say that there has never been a precedent of this kind in this place where some government members have received a budget document in advance of others. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, it's a breach of my privilege and our privilege as parliamentarians. This cannot be allowed to occur.
question privilege?
It is not the same question privilege, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I heard the call for the members to come back to the House. I returned to the House. Unfortunately, I was told by security at the bottom of the hill that we were unable to access the House of Commons through our normal transport because they were holding the buses on account of empty cars from the Prime Minister needing to return in order for us to be able to brought to the House of Commons. Mr. Speaker, I missed the vote. I apologize to my colleagues for missing the vote, but this is absolutely ridiculous. What kind of control is this Prime Minister and this government trying to exert over members of the House where I cannot return in order to vote on orders of the day and perhaps be detained from hearing the budget, Mr. Speaker?
Thank the member for Milton for her. It's a different question privilege that she's raised, which I will certainly look into, and I'll get a report from the Parliamentary Protective Service because this should not happen. The honourable member for Flamborough-Glanbrook is rising on the same question.
Mr. Speaker, on the same point as member from Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, not only I understand that you wanted to take responsibility for the distribution, but after the distribution, Mr. Speaker, we all have the electronic capability of communicating messages outside. And many of the members who had in their possession those documents were instead of handing them back after you had stood up and motioned that it was inappropriate, they started texting. And I would ask, Mr. Speaker, that you would, this is a demonstration of the lack of respect for our privilege, Mr. Speaker. I would ask, Mr. Speaker, that you would undertake an investigation to find out exactly how many messages from members of Parliament from the government side actually left this House and communicated items of the budget prior to the budget being delivered by the Minister of Finance.
The honourable member for Beauce. Yes, Mr. Speaker. I would like to rise on a question of privilege because I would like to confirm what my colleague from Milton said earlier. I wished indeed to exert my right to vote as an MP, but given everything that is happening on the Hill, I was unable to do that, and I apologize to my electors in Beauce, and I hope that you will continue an investigation into this matter, and I am ready to give testimony on what happened today, as I was not able to exert my parliamentary privilege because of tactics that the government party is using. It's completely unacceptable, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the member for Beauce.
Question?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member mentioned earlier that certain members of the House were given privileged access to sensitive government budgetary information. Now, there are historical and procedural reasons why all members of Parliament are given equal access to this sensitive information, but there is also a very important economic reason, and that is that any individual having advanced access to this sensitive information could potentially profit from it. We do recall that roughly a decade ago, an RCMP investigation was launched into a previous budget measure because certain individuals were given an advanced view of a decision with respect to income trusts. That RCMP investigation led to charges. Now, Mr. Speaker, we have no evidence at this point that anything of that nature has occurred here. However, Mr. Speaker, I would ask you to broaden the investigation that the honourable member has asked you to carry out to ensure that none of the sensitive information contained in the budget was shared by members of the government who had advanced access to it prior to its public and parliamentary release. Thank you.
Member for Banff Airdrie is rising on the same question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I have a point of privilege as well, one that is similar but different than the ones that have been raised previously. So, in addition to what we've seen today, you know, over the last couple of days in terms of this display of this attack on democracy from the government, and we've now, of course, seen the arrogance the Prime Minister displayed in question period today, and then we've had the budget documents distributed to government members prior to opposition members receiving them. But, Mr. Speaker, after you had called for those documents to not be released, the pages had stepped back as you had instructed. Now, I can understand why members would be eager to find out how much their taxes are going to be raised, to see how much bigger the deficit's going to be this year. But I did see one member in particular on the government side, after you had instructed for the documents not to continue to be released, the pages had stepped back. The member for Orleans then had a page come back to his desk from the back and give him the budget documents following that. And he accepted those documents, knowing full well that he wasn't supposed to be receiving them. I would say that was a breach of all members' privileges, and I would ask that you investigate that as well, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Victoria.
Speaker, it's come to my attention that the honourable member for Don Valley East has been taking pictures in the House of the opposition and tweeting that. I have evidence before me to that effect, Mr. Speaker. That is an entirely inappropriate action, contrary to the rules of this place.
Remind members that members are not allowed to take photographs in the House, and they should put away their devices if they're using them for that purpose. They're certainly allowed to use their devices, but they're not allowed to take photographs in here. The honourable member for Perth Wellington on the same question.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. The member from Don Valley East, her picture is on Twitter. It has been uploaded. I encourage you, Mr. Speaker, to direct the member to delete that picture, consistent with the rules of this House and the tradition of this honourable place. That picture should be removed with all undue haste.
Absolutely. Order. The member is quite correct. And I direct the member who took the picture and tweeted it to delete it immediately. The Honourable Opposition House Leader on the same question.
Mr. Speaker, if you do find that a prima facie has occurred in the issues that have been raised, I would be prepared to move the appropriate motions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. It's response to the Honourable Assistant House Leader. I want members to understand that it's customary for the member who has raised the question of privilege to move the appropriate motion when the time arises. And if that's the case, that's what we'll look for. The Honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill is rising on the
Yes, a point of order on decorum, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the member's tweet from Don Valley East, she accused the opposition of being infantile while she was taking pictures of us and actually being in violation of the standing standing orders, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, actually, in a point of clarification, to educate the member, what has been happening here is we are raising points of privilege because we do believe that our privilege has been violated by sensitive government information being released prior to the speech of the budget. So, Mr. Speaker, I would also ask that this, and the media has this as well too, Mr. Speaker, I would ask that you look into this member and her violation of all of our privilege here. Thank you.
Member for Victoria on the same question privilege.
Speaker, I believe that in response to the Honourable Government House Leader, you indicated it was for the person who moved the motion to actually bring this to the attention and move the appropriate motion, which I now hereby do.
I think the member for Victoria, will know that that if the Speaker finds a prima facie case of privilege, it's not for the Speaker to determine whether there's been contempt or not. It's for the House to determine that the Speaker may find a prima facie case, in which case the Speaker then calls upon the member who raised the question of privilege to do that, to move the motion. And should I come to that point, that's what I would do. And I will take it under advisement and examine the question and come back to the House on it. Orders of the day. Member for York Simcoe is rising on a point of order.
With due respect, Mr. Speaker, you did make a prima facie finding with regard to the member from Don Valley East, and it is in that regard that there is an effort to move the appropriate motion. If you're saying you did not make that prima facie finding, that's a very different matter indeed. But I believe I heard you find that the member's actions were in breach of the privileges of the members of this House, as they are set out in our rules and our traditions. So I would appreciate your clarification on whether you did in fact rule on that and make a finding on that.
I ruled on it as a matter of order, as these things are, not a matter of privilege in that case. The House will now proceed to the consideration of Ways and Means proceeding number 10 concerning the budget presentation. Mr. Morneau, seconded by Ms. Monsef, moves that the House approve in general the budgetary policy of the government. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to start by saying I very much appreciate the advance applause. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to begin by saying that we are thinking of our friends in the United Kingdom.
In the United Kingdom at this time, knowing that they're facing a tragedy, we think about the families who are facing something that is indescribably difficult. I'd like to start just by saying that that is important for all of us to reflect upon. Monsieur le Président, je suis...
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise before the House today to table budget documents for 2017, including notices of Ways and Means motions. The details of the measures are contained in these documents. I'm asking that an order of the day be designated for the consideration of these motions. I also wish to announce the government will introduce legislation to implement the measures in the budget.
As Canadians come together to celebrate Canada 150, we proudly reflect on the generations that came before us. Generations that built a country on the belief that with hope and hard work, they could deliver a better future for themselves and for their children and for their grandchildren. That optimism and that confidence helped define us as a country. Sharing those beliefs with others made Canada a beacon of diversity, openness, and generosity around the world. Yet, over the last few decades, the middle class and those working hard to join it have fallen behind. Everyday folks who work hard to provide for their families are worried about the future. They're worried that rapid technological change, the seemingly never-ending need for new skills, and growing demands on our time mean that their kids won't have the same opportunities that they had. And Mr. Speaker, who can blame them? For a decade, middle-class struggles were simply swept under the rug. People were left without a clear vision at a time of unprecedented change. But the good news is that Canadians, on their own accord, worked hard and persevered. We've always been resilient and innovative, able to adapt and prosper in the face of change. Sachons cela.
Knowing that, we put together a plan to ensure that in a changing world, Canada's middle class and those working hard to join it can and will succeed. A year and a half ago, our government set out to deliver the kind of change that would make a real difference for Canadians. We said we would help people retire with dignity. We said we would ask the wealthiest 1% to pay a little more so we could cut taxes for the middle class. We said we would make smart, responsible investments in our communities. That's exactly what we did. We've delivered on behalf of Canadians, and we're just getting started.
Now, we realize that there's much more hard work in front of us than behind us. But I remain inspired that we're on the right path. One of the most memorable moments I've had as Canada's finance minister actually happened in a taxi cab in Toronto. On the way home one night, my taxi cab driver, Mian, recognized me, and we started chatting. Then he did something that surprised me. He called his wife, and he put her on the speakerphone. They wanted to talk to me about the difference that the Canada Child Benefit had made in their lives. Remember, Mr. Speaker, that this benefit gives 9 out of 10 Canadian families with kids more help with the high cost of managing their family. In Mian's case, with 3 children aged 11, 9, and 10 months, the Canada Child Benefit means that he and his wife receive about $300 more each month than they did a year ago. That's an extra $3,600 tax-free every year, money that can be put towards groceries, school supplies, and new clothes for going back to school. There are countless other stories just like this one across the country, each a sign that confidence is building and that our plan for middle-class prosperity is working. Stories like Dave's, a plumber from British Columbia who took advantage of a training program supported by the federal government to get his Red Seal certification last year. Now he has a well-paying job and is able to return to and work in his community. Ilya Nubis.
And Nebis, a mother of 3 from a remote Algonquin community in Quebec. The Canada Child Benefit has helped her 3 kids enrolled in hockey this season.
Nubis, like millions of middle-class Canadians, want to see progress for themselves and their families. They want a government that puts people first. They want a government focused on creating good jobs today while also preparing Canadians for the jobs of tomorrow. They want a government that puts our skilled, talented, and creative people at the heart of a more innovative and globally competitive Canada. Mr. Speaker, here's our plan. Across the country, we're building stronger communities.
We're doing it by creating jobs, shortening commutes, ensuring clean air and water, and improving quality of life for millions of Canadians. In the last year and a half, 744 public transit projects have been approved
long-awaited and transformative light rail projects are underway. In Montreal and Vancouver, riders can look forward to a more enjoyable commute thanks to rehabilitation work being done to the Metro and SkyTrain systems. We're repairing nearly 50,000 social housing units to make sure families have a safe and a secure place to live. We've lifted 18 long-term boil water advisories in First Nations communities because our work continues, because we will not stop until every child in Canada has access to clean drinking water. 10 years from now, our cities, towns, northern and rural communities will be healthier and better connected. Our air and our water will be cleaner. More Canadian goods will get to international markets, and modern, efficient public transit systems will get hard-working parents home more quickly at the end of a long day. As we look to the coming decades, we also see the potential of new innovations to transform our lives. Self-driving cars, artificial intelligence, genomics, quantum computing, mobile payments, the sharing economy. These ideas are changing our world for the better, just like the innovations that preceded them. A few decades ago, we never could have imagined how mobile computing would impact our lives. Thanks to e-commerce platforms, an Alberta farmer can sell top-quality beef to millions of potential buyers all over the world.
And cutting-edge research from Montreal has led to breakthrough treatments for multiple sclerosis.
We must see the immense opportunities that these changes bring with them, opportunities for progress and prosperity. And while the rapid pace of change can seem dizzying at times, we must never lose sight of what's driving these breakthrough innovations: people. People like Mian, Dave, and Nubis. And so, as we create the jobs of tomorrow, we'll support a culture of lifelong learning to help workers and their families adapt to the changing demands of our time. We'll help students get the skills and work experience they need to kickstart their careers. We'll make it more affordable for thousands of parents of young children to learn new skills while raising their families. And we'll give people who've lost their jobs a chance to go back to school for further training, helping those Canadians to advance their careers and turn challenges into opportunities.
To give our young people the best possible start, we will promote hands-on learning in science, technology, engineering, and math, especially for young women, girls, and Indigenous youth.
Work being done by impressive organizations like Ladies Learning Code and Actua will encourage students to learn coding in the same way they learn to read and write, preparing our kids for the jobs of the future. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2017 is about creating good middle-class jobs now and in the years to come. And to do that, we need to focus on our strengths, where we can lead globally and create good jobs for Canadians. In this budget, we're making investments in 6 economic sectors where Canada can lead the way: digital, clean tech, agri-food, advanced manufacturing, biosciences, and clean resources. In the realm of digital technology, I know 2 things to be true, Mr. Speaker. 1, Canada can be a world leader. And 2, we just can't afford not to be.
That's why we will launch a pan-Canadian artificial intelligence strategy and bring together Canada's main centres of AI expertise to drive investment and job creation across the country.
Agri-food, too, we're positioned for success. By 2050, global demand for food is expected to rise by 70%. That means more demand for prairie canola, Atlantic crab and lobster, and BC berries. It also means more jobs in the fields of southwestern Ontario and on the maple syrup farms of Quebec's eastern townships. We'll help farmers, producers, and processors build their businesses globally and do so sustainably. Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that our environment and our economy go hand in hand. It's why we've worked with the provinces and territories to adopt the Pan-Canadian Framework on clean growth and climate change. This not only means cleaner air to breathe, it means business and investment opportunities. That means that jobs installing solar cells, manufacturing electric cars, or developing cleaner fuels will be in high demand. Well, luckily, our energy sector is already well positioned to not only compete, but to lead. By investing in clean tech and responsible resource development, we'll preserve our environment for future generations, create great jobs, and restake our claim as a leading supplier of energy to the world for the next 150 years. Mr. Speaker, our plan is clear. Smart, ambitious investments in people, communities, and high-growth industries lead to opportunity. Opportunity leads to jobs. Jobs lead to a more confident and growing middle class. And a more confident, growing middle class is the only path to a strong and sustained economic growth. The government's role in all of this is to lend support to those who are driving us forward and to make sure that everyone has a real and fair chance at success. This means, first of all, ensuring that our most basic needs are met, and health and well-being are at the very top of that list. Notre système de soins de santé.
Though our universal healthcare system is a source of pride for many Canadians, we know that more can be done for families caring for aging or disabled loved ones. It's why this budget provides support for caregivers helping loved ones at home and makes it easier for Canadians living with disabilities to get the tax relief they need.
Mr. Speaker, we believe that whether their ailments are physical or mental, Canadians deserve the best possible care that we can provide. They deserve our help. And I'm pleased that with leadership from the Minister of Health, over the last several months, we've reached health agreements with nearly every single province and territory. Through these landmark agreements and historic health transfers to provinces and territories, representing over $200 billion over the next 5 years, we'll reduce stress for families. We'll ensure that every young person under the age of 25 gets the mental health support that they need and deserve. Mr. Speaker, having had the honour of representing and meeting families in St. Jamestown and Regent Park in Toronto, I've seen firsthand the challenge of affordable housing. And so, it's my privilege to announce that the government will be investing over $11 billion, the largest single commitment in Budget 2017. And this, Mr. Speaker, is in support of a national housing strategy to protect every Canadian's right to a safe and affordable place to call home. Notre gouvernement a fait preuve de...
Our government has shown and will continue to show national leadership on housing. And we will prioritize support for vulnerable citizens, including seniors, Indigenous peoples, survivors fleeing domestic violence, persons with disabilities, those dealing with mental health issues, and veterans.
Speaker, the decisions we make and the policies we create impact men and women differently.
In order to make laws and develop policies and programs that are in the best interests of all Canadians, we have to know what kind of impact they will have.
For example, that while Canadian companies are getting better when it comes to hiring more women, they're still less effective at promoting women to senior roles. And we know that fewer women join or stay in the workforce than men. That means that as a country, we're not taking full advantage of the talents, the insights, and the experiences of more than half of our population. It makes no sense. We need to do better. And so as a first step, we've asked the Canada-United States Council for Advancement of Women Entrepreneurs and Business Leaders to quickly advise us on how we can better empower women entrepreneurs and remove barriers for women in business. But not all obstacles to progress are obvious. So in Budget 2017, we did something that should have been done a long time ago. We published the government's first ever gender statement, an assessment that ensures that all budget measures, not just those aimed specifically at women, help us advance the goals of fairness, gender equality, and stronger workforce participation. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, we realize that this is just the start, and we look forward to feedback on this first effort, which we will then build into future budgets.
Another challenge we must confront, Mr. Speaker, is access to quality childcare. Too often we hear stories of single parents living in poverty because the cost of childcare is so high that they can't afford to go back to work. And that's not acceptable in our country. To help low and middle-income families with the cost of childcare, we're committing $7 billion over the next decade to increase the number of high-quality childcare spaces available across our country. In order to provide immediate relief, this will be working together with provinces and territories, and we know that doing this could create up to 40,000 new subsidized childcare spaces over the next 3 years. Canadian parents deserve our support, and we're delivering. Mr. Speaker, we know that strong partnerships between the federal government and Indigenous communities are crucial for our success. Over the next 5 years, funding for Indigenous peoples will have increased by over 27% from what it was when this government took office, well in excess of what would have been provided under the decades-old 2% funding cap, and will contribute to a higher quality of life on reserves while setting Canada on a path towards true reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. This work continues today, both because it's a recognition of the rights of Indigenous peoples and because it's essential to our economic future. Ensemble,
Together, we will build stronger, more resilient communities and renew our nation-to-nation relationship with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis.
We'll help to break down employment barriers with a focus on skills development, training, and better education. And we'll provide greater access to mental health, wellness, and suicide prevention services while working with Indigenous communities to combat substance abuse. This is our plan for Canada. For it to succeed, we all have to do our share. Mr. Speaker, I've been very fortunate in my life to have had a successful career in business, and I've always paid my fair share of taxes. But it can be tempting for some to be too aggressive in their tax planning. Our review of federal tax expenditures, for example, highlighted a number of issues around tax planning, strategies using private corporations, strategies that can result in some very wealthy individuals getting tax breaks at the expense of others. Monsieur le Président, les Canadiens...
Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect a fair tax system. Our government is committed to taking action on this issue, and we will have more to say on this in the near future. One of our government's very first actions was to raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% so that we could cut taxes for the middle class. Because of this tax cut, 9 million Canadians see more money on every single paycheck. That, Mr. Speaker, is change that makes a real difference in people's lives. We also gave the Canada Revenue Agency more resources to detect, audit, and combat illegal tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance.
Going forward, we'll close loopholes that result in unfair tax advantages for some at the expense of others. We'll eliminate inefficient tax measures, especially those that disproportionately benefit the wealthy. And we'll work with the provinces and the territories to crack down on those who hide their identity to avoid paying taxes in our country. Because, Mr. Speaker, let me be clear, all Canadians must pay their fair share of taxes. Period. Monsieur le Président, the Canada...
Mr. Speaker, Canada has always played an important role on the international stage. And going forward, as needs change, so too will our approach. When it comes to international aid, for example, we remain committed to helping the most vulnerable people in the world, and we will continue to modernize our approach in order to have better results, improve transparency, and foster innovation.
In uniform, in increasingly complex and unpredictable times, our government will soon release a new defence policy for Canada, following extensive consultation and analysis. Mr. Speaker, we also know that as a trading nation, our future depends on openness and investment. And that means never missing an opportunity to remind the world of what makes Canada a great place to live, to play, and to do business. Nowhere is this truer than with our neighbours to the south. Canada and the U.S. have the most successful economic relationship in the world, supporting millions of middle-class jobs on both sides of the border. We're proud of this fact. And we're also proud to have recently concluded CETA, a free trade agreement that will create jobs, reduce red tape, and give Canadian businesses preferred access to 500 million potential customers across the European Union. And as we prepare for the global economy of tomorrow, we'll put our best foot forward, always looking to develop strategic partnerships to attract talent and investment. Partnerships that will help our companies succeed, create good middle-class jobs here at home, and do well globally. Mr. Speaker, Canada 150 reminds us all that we have so much to be thankful for. Sur le plan économique.
Economically, our talented, skilled, educated, diverse, and innovative workforce gives us tremendous potential for growth. Our values, our stories, and our cultures shine for the world to see. Our official languages are flourishing, and they open an entire world to us and make our country unique.
Natural beauty, they're unparalleled, allowing us to share the joys of building a campfire with our kids, hiking with a college friend, or swimming in cool, clean waters. In fact, this year we're putting our national parks on full display as we invite Canadians and families from around the world to enjoy them free of charge. Most importantly, Mr. Speaker, we've begun to see signs of confidence and optimism return to the middle class. Consumer spending is up since we introduced the Canada Child Benefit. In the last 7 months, we've seen 250,000 new jobs, the best job gains in over a decade. Unemployment has fallen in the time since we took office. These are good early signs that our plan is working. C'est la raison pour laquelle.
That's why we will continue to invest in our people, our communities, and our economy, while maximizing every dollar and ensuring it is well spent. We also want to make sure that our debt-to-GDP ratio remains positive.
Will enable us to maintain our enviable position as the G7 nation with the best balance sheet. Most importantly, at the same time, we'll have built a better future for our kids. But, Mr. Speaker, we know that there's so much more to do on behalf of middle-class Canadians. Middle-class Canadians like Mian, Dave, and Nubis. Working together, we'll embrace change and deliver prosperity for all. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order. Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent.
We understand why the Minister of Finance had a photo-op with children 2 days ago. Because children and grandchildren will pay because its actual government lost control of public spending money. This is totally unacceptable. Monsieur le Président, sans...
Mr. Speaker, one thing has been made crystal clear today, and that's that the Liberal government has completely lost control over public spending. Only 2 years ago, these people were elected saying that they would run a little deficit of $10 billion and they would balance the budget when? In 2019. Well, Mr. Speaker, in 2019, Canadians will be celebrating a deficit of $27.9 billion, Mr. Speaker. That's completely unacceptable. This government is showing contempt for Canadians because it's completely lost control of public spending. Over the next 6 years, this government will generate deficits of $113 billion. Barely 6 months ago, they gave a budget update, and they were just off by $13 billion. Well, these people don't know how to count. But worse, Mr. Speaker, as of midnight, Canadians will be paying new taxes. Taxes on tobacco, taxes on alcohol, and other taxes. So this government is manufacturing taxes, and it's lost control of public spending. Meanwhile, it's sermonizing to everyone about ecology and the environment, but they've gotten rid of the public transport tax credit. So they say one thing and they do the other.
When Canada will get back to zero deficit?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to be here with my colleagues today to explain our plan. This is an ambitious plan for Canada. It's a plan we started a year and a half ago. We started with measures that really improved the trust that middle-class Canadians have in us. And now we can see that our plan is working. We have a lower unemployment rate than we had a year ago. We are entering a much better situation for the middle class in Canada.
What we know is that taking that increase in confidence for the middle class and making ambitious investments in the long term, that's what's going to grow our economy. That's what's going to make Canada better for future generations. What the people on the other side of this House don't seem to understand is what happened over the 10 years before we came into office is we didn't make the investments we needed to grow our economy. We've set about to increase confidence, to grow our economy, so that our children and our grandchildren will be better off. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, that is an ambitious plan for the future, and it will be very good for Canadians across the country. Questions and comments, the Honourable Member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate for everyone living in poverty and who expected assistance from the government. You're going to have to keep waiting because you're going to have to wait until the next federal election when we open the doors and invest in our communities. The Liberal Party, the Liberal government in this House has said on several occasions that they would be bridging the gap making up for the shortfall called for by the Human Rights Tribunal for Aboriginal children. There is nothing in the budget to fulfill that promise. However, they're continuing, Mr. Speaker, to maintain a loophole for stock options for the richest members of our society, CEOs. They're giving a tax gift to them, to the 1%, the richest 1%, and they're abandoning Aboriginal children. How can they explain that type of shameful behavior? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, the figures are clear. There is a change in this country. 250,000 people over the last few months have found jobs. We have made tangible investments to improve the situation for Canadians. There are some other, even more interesting figures. We can now say with the Canada Child Benefit that this year, 300,000 children have been lifted out of poverty. And we can also say that we have increased the GIS for seniors and added funding to help lift seniors out of poverty. So the figures are clear. Our plan is having a real impact, and our vision for the future is much better for Canadians.
Comments, and a member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, I'm looking at the GDP growth projections presented in Budget 2016 and Budget 2017. The GDP growth, real growth projection in 2016 was 1.4%. In Budget 2017, it's 1.3%. In Budget 2016, it was 2.2%. In Budget 2017, it's 1.9%.
Going down.
In Budget 2016, it was 2.2%. In Budget 2017, it's 2.0%.
Going down.
And the trend continues. So, Mr. Speaker, from Budget 2016 to Budget 2017, we've seen a massive increase in the projected deficit that this government has presented, and yet the government is presenting a decreased projected forecast in real GDP growth. Can the Finance Minister stand to the House and explain, as to many of us who may not be an economist, I am, but could he explain exactly what the GDP growth calculation is? And then, so exactly how GDP is calculated, and then what part of that calculation is failing due to this budget deficit?
Think he has a clue.
Can he also explain to Canadians, if they're going to stand up and say that this deficit is supposed to create jobs and economic growth, why they're showing a decreased GDP growth
Good
figure?
question.
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to talk about our economic situation. What we've seen over the last year is that the ambitious plan that we've put in place is having a real impact. It's having an impact on the most vulnerable in our society by taking children out of poverty. It's having an impact on families who, because of the Canada Child Benefit, have more money to spend that's going into our economy. And so what we're seeing, Mr. Speaker, what we're seeing is very important. We've seen a decline in unemployment. That's critically important. It's gone from 7.1 to 6.6%. What we're seeing as well, Mr. Speaker, is that our economy is proving resilient because of the measures that we put in place. And what we know, Mr. Speaker, is that as we make those investments in the future, we are going to see an increased level of growth. Now, the economists who do their forecasts, they look at the global situation and they put out those numbers. We use those numbers as our base. What I can tell you is that we're ambitious. We want to help Canadians. We know that we will do so. We know that as they get better jobs, more jobs, we will have better economic outcomes. That's the future for Canada, for our children and our grandchildren.
Bravo. Questions and comments, and a member for Central Okanagan's Milkmaid Nicollet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Finance Minister for his presentation today. I'd like to just follow up with a few things. First of all, both Conservative and Liberal finance ministers in the past, Mr. Speaker, took pride when they presented this place with a balanced budget. Yet this finance minister continues to treat balanced budgets like it's a dirty word. The member from St. Laurent has asked him 16 times when we'll return back to balance, and now we know why, Mr. Speaker, because between the time of the last fall economic update In 2016 to today, 6 months, we've seen an extra $13 billion that are presented on page 37 of the budget, showing that these guys are spending more and more, and we're hearing that the economy, the GDP, will go down and down. Mr. Speaker, when will this finance minister present responsible planning for Canada's future? When are they going to stop talking about investments in the middle class? Right now, Mr. Speaker, they're mortgaging the middle class.
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we started our plan on our very first day. We took a look at middle-class anxiety, and we decided that what we were going to do was we were going to ask the richest to pay a little bit more, and we were going to give a tax reduction to middle class. Then what we did was we went further. We helped people with more money for their kids. And what we're seeing is that's making a difference. Unfortunately, the government before us, who racked up over $100 billion in debt themselves, left us with a low growth rate. So making investments is critically important for us to make a difference in the future. That is what we're doing. We're making those investments so we will all be better off in the future. So we will have a situation where the growth rate will make it clear that Canada continues to be a country that can lead the world. That's the ambition we have, leading the world so our children and grandchildren will have great jobs in the future.
Hear, hear. Resuming debate. Honourable Government House Leaders rising on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm tabling government responses to questions numbers 831 to 836. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Resuming debate. The Honourable Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to be the voice of the taxpayer on this side of the voice for Canadians across the country who see today how this government has once again failed to recognize the challenges of regular, hard-working Canadians, the challenges that they're facing. And they were hoping for a break today. They needed a break, and they didn't get one. Instead of taking the necessary steps to help our businesses grow and create jobs, this Liberal budget caters only to the interests of the Prime Minister and his friends, not the families and workers of this country. Instead of lowering taxes and giving people a badly needed break, they're raising taxes and spending more. Now, when I conclude my remarks tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, I will make clear how the Prime Minister's preference for this reckless spending, while never delivering results, is going to hurt Canada today, but also for years to come. But, Mr. Speaker, before I finish, I would like to commend the Finance Minister on one thing, and that is on his choice of footwear, because he bought them in my hometown of Edmonton in a great store named Poppy Barley. So thank you for doing that. I much appreciate it. But however, Mr. Speaker, until then, I move that the debate now be adjourned. Well done.
It being 5:10, the House stands. Pursuant to Standing Order 83-2, the debate is adjourned. It being 5:10, this House stands adjourned until tomorrow at 10 a.m. pursuant to Standing Order 24-1.